Chapter 18 Chapter Summary in which things get progressively harder for Adrian. Spoiler alert, it's his dick chapter notes. So with the last chapter we hit 2 major milestones, 1,000 kudos and 50,000 words. This is honestly such a tremendous and unexpected reaction for my first ever fan FIC, but I'm so glad you all seem to like this much. So thanks to everyone who reads and comments, you make my day 3 also, hang in there. I don't yet have an end in sight for this FIC and things will probably definitely be getting wilder with each chapter. Enjoy sinners. See the end of the chapter for more notes as Ladybug's lips tilted up to meet his for the 5th, or was it the 6th? As Ladybug's lips tilted up to meet his for the however many time tonight, Adrian finally allowed himself to believe this was truly happening. What a wonderful thing to lose count of. He thought the idea floating up from his subconscious to bob across the warm haze wrapping him from head to toe. Everything was light and heat and happiness, making it difficult for Adrian not to smile into their kiss as he reined in another giddy laugh. It was all her doing. He knew it was. For years Ladybug had been his main source of joy. The shining beacon that pulled him back when he felt himself toe the edge into darkness. Everything else, his father, his job, his empty bedroom and lonely meals, seemed to drive him closer and closer to her, making him revel in whatever small if oh so poignant bit of attention she threw his way. Any look, any laugh or smile or smirk or snort his lady maid was a carefully treasured gift filed away for him to call upon when things got particularly tough. But this. Oh God, was this so much more? More than he could hope for, more than he would ever dare to hope for. Because misfortune was not a magnet for good luck. Rainclouds didn't draw the sun, broken mirror didn't spell out favorable odds, and black cats didn't attract ladybugs. Yet here she was all the same. Perfect and panting and mine, Adrian thought forcefully, wonderfully. Utterly and totally mine. He repeated the word over and over in his mind, trying to spell it out with his tongue as he wrote his declaration along the roof of her mouth. At some point he must have vocalized it, the words slipping out between haggard breaths as they parted to replenish their supply of oxygen. Ladybug looked up at him, eyes half-lidded and sparkling despite the cover of night before she let the title roll off her own tongue to mingle in the space between their lips. Mine. It was single syllable that held a world's worth of opportunity. For him. For her. For them as there was most definitely a them now. It was an offering, one that Adrian wasted no time in accepting. You're mine, he said, halfway between a plea and a command as he crashed down upon her for the however many plus one time. Ladybug let out a groan, the sound only spurring Adrian to press impossibly closer to her as his back dug into the wall behind him. At his lady's urging, the two had managed to move to a more secluded area of the roof, now completely cut off from view from the street as Chat's hand pressed firmly into Ladybug's back, occasionally sliding down and around to settle back atop her hips. He couldn't decide which position he liked better, so the obvious solution was both. Adrian had always prided himself on being a quick learner. It was a trait Mr. Agreste seemed to appreciate as well, looking on approvingly as his son excelled at nearly every talent thrust upon him. When he was 7, it was smiling for the camera. When he was 12, it was fencing. And now at 16, he had finally picked up on the art of French kissing, though something told him this was one skill his father hadn't really intended to be a part of his repertoire. This is okay? Adrian asked once again, breaking away for a brief moment to give his girlfriend a questioning look. More than okay, she replied, a bit breathless as she licked at her lips. You sure you've never done this before, kitty? Positive, my lady. He teased back. God, she looked so great like this, you must just be an excellent teacher. You act as if I have any clue what I'm doing. Maybe you don't, but whatever it is, it's really working for me. Glad to hear it, Ladybug said, drawing her fingers along his jaw before poking his chin. Adrian tilted his head down to playfully nip at her hand, laughing as she withdrew it with a chastising noise. No biting, now. Does that mean I can bite later? Not my fingers, you don't. She replied cryptically, sending a rush down his spine. And honestly, the curiosity on your face is a bit worrying. What's on your mind, alley cat? A whole slew of things I would probably get slapped for if I told you. He decided to give her the abridged version, gathering up his chat-granted bravado before continuing on in a purr. I'm just wondering which set of lingerie you decided on. Adrian let his eyes flicker down her body, appreciative but quick before snapping back up, take in the loveliness of her face. Ladybug's eyes widened in a response Adrian briefly mistook for desire. Of course that was before he saw her brow furrow into a decidedly less than pleased expression, worry creeping its way from behind his ribs as he readied himself to apologize. He didn't get the chance. Shit, Ladybug cursed, mouth twisting into a pout as she brought a hand up to slap against her forehead. With all the commotion with the Akuma, I forgot to go back for the damn thing. Adrian was caught between laughing and crying, settling on a choked chuckle as he watched her bemoan the loss of her coveted purchase. Hey, come on, he said, rubbing her upper arms comfortingly. You can pick it up next time you're there. Ladybug sighed. PSH, not likely. I doubt my mom would still pay a designer price after I all but ditched her in the middle of an emergency. She didn't stop lecturing me the entire car ride home. Well, that answers my second question then. He responded absently, not quite sure how to cheer her up. Yeah, and what was that? Ladybug said, shaking her head as if to clear it before slipping back into her previously flirtatious tone. He just gave her his best Chat Noir grin before whispering low in her ear. I was going to ask if you were wearing it. Adrian drew back with a wink, oblivious to the look of confusion curling at her features. ... You mean like, on top of my costume? Ladybug asked, not seeming to properly process his question. No, I was talking about under the suit. Loving the little huff she gave at his answer, Adrian leaned in to press a kiss against the section of Ladybug's jaw she seemed to like. Seizing up at her next words flew right by his ear. But I don't wear anything under the suit. He pulled back with a gulp, body flooding with familiar warmth as her words wormed their way beneath his skin. Though her response was phrased as a question, the impact of the statement hit him solidly in the gut, and Adrian suddenly having trouble producing words. Come on, aggressed, use your big boy sentences, UUGHNFG. Nah, nothing. Nailed it. Well yeah, Ladybug said, the blush creeping along her cheeks only managing to somehow further arouse him. I mean my clothes disappear when I transform so. In hindsight, it made a lot of sense. Adrian was vaguely aware of his own underthings melting away once he turned into Chat Noir, so it was perfectly logical to conclude that the same thing must happen for Ladybug. Yet somehow that juicy little detail had somehow managed to slip his mind throughout his years of fantasizing. Well, that's a dangerous piece of information to have. He thought dazedly. Goodbye sleep. Chat. Ladybug questioned, waving her gloved hand before his empty stare. You good there? Define good. Yeah. He chirped out, eyes still unfocused as he tried to slow his breathing. Yeah, I'm cool. Cool. She quirked a brow. You aren't cool, are you? Nope. Ladybug laughed at his frazzled appearance, wrapping her arms around his neck with a coy if blushing expression before initiating another brief kiss. She broke away, pressing a peck to his chin, then his jaw, then. Well, I happen to like you hot. She emphasized her last word with a warm huff of air against his throat, causing Adrian to shudder. This girl might possibly be trying to kill me. It wasn't long before they were back to their previous level of intensity, this kiss somehow impossibly more charged than the last. Ladybug tugged at the hair brushing his neck, prompting his jaw to drop further. She took the opportunity to continue mapping every corner of his mouth, letting her deft tongue and impossibly skilled lips draw every fragment of desire from him as she explored to her heart's content. Meanwhile, Adrian was on fire. Lust coursed through his body like a virus, supercharged by adrenaline to begin working its way into his deepest muscles. Her words and his subsequent thoughts mingled into a reactive cocktail that seemed to bring his very blood to a boil. It was too good. Too much. Too hot. Too fast. Too hard. Adrian's eyes widened in panic as he felt the flesh below his belt firm up, bulging out just inches from where Ladybug stood. He groaned, half frustration and half arousal as he tried to angle his hips farther back. Thankfully, she seemed too enthralled in their kiss to notice his very physical reaction, returning his moan with one of her softer ones as she continued to creep closer. Meanwhile, Adrian was on the verge of a complete and utter meltdown. Fuck. You cannot do this right now, goddammit. He silently screamed at himself, unsuccessfully willing the blood away from his erection as he tried to think of ways to calm down. Here, his mind answered politely, conjuring the image of a grinning Ladybug peeling her naked body out from behind her suit. Does this help? Needless to say, it didn't. Well, Adrian choked out, breaking their kiss suddenly before crossing his legs in what he hoped would look like a relaxed stance. This was super great, but I think my miraculous is wearing off. His voice grew embarrassingly pitchy on the last few words, causing him to wince before sending Ladybug a forced smile. Seeing her stand before him, bangs ruffled, chest heaving, and lips swollen from use, Adrian could barely compose his next sentence. He twitched uncomfortably under the restrictive material of his suit, trying to remain casual before mentally saying, fuck it, and scrambling his way up the steep rooftop to their left. Chat, you're super hot. I had an awesome time. Text you later. Bye. Chat Noir ran. He ran faster than perhaps he ever had in all his time as a superhero. And he didn't stop until he made it back home. That night, Adrian learned 2 things: that he can, in fact, come 3 times in the span of 45 minutes. And online orders of $100 or more qualified him for free shipping. I know I'm going to regret asking this, but I really need some advice. Nino looked up from his tablet, sliding his headphones down to string around his neck before turning to face his newly arrived friend. The third week of the new school year was drawing to a close, meaning classes were back into full swing as students settled back into their academic responsibilities. The crisp, late September weather only seemed to highlight the fact summer was over, that it was time to begin looking towards fall. Towards lesson and holidays and all the changes that came the autumn shift. Though Adrian didn't know how much more he could take in terms of changes. Life right now was somehow more incredible, as well as more hectic, than it had ever been up until this point. He was in a far different place than he had been 6 months ago, that's for damn sure. Before leaving for his summer tour, Adrian had been a single, prepubescent loner, spending his days shuffling between school and lessons and shoots, all the while counting down the minutes until he could become Chad Noir again. Of course he still more or less did the same thing now, only everything had grown far crazier since his homecoming. Classes were more challenging, prompting him to sign up for tutoring to maintain his sparkling GPA. His extracurricular lessons also seemed to spike in intensity, pushing him to new mental and physical breaking points before Adrian begged them off under the guise of wanting to focus more on his fashion career. Mr. Agreste begrudgingly allowed it. Modeling contracts were dropped on him in droves, the shots becoming progressively racier due to his newly matured appearance. Oh, his father was adamant that Adrian not appear shirtless until he was of a more proper age, but that didn't stop photographers from bearing as much of him as they could, willing the model into increasingly suggestive poses with women years older than he was. Days were long, shifts were tough, and Adrian was busier than he'd ever been. That being said, there were two bright spots in his life. The first was the friends he'd made at school. Adrian lived for the idle conversations and occasional hangouts with his classmates, reveling in the feeling of having some semblance of a social life after living so shut off for so long. And with his age came some small measure of freedom, it would seem. Adrian found it was much easier now to get approval for small outings like movie trips or days playing soccer at the park, most often meeting up with Nino, Aaliyah, and Marinette, and increasingly occasional tag along to their group adventures. He was growing closer to the people around, and it made all the difference. Of course his life still revolved around being Chad Noir, as with his alter ego came the brightest spot of all. Actually, make that brightest spots of all, Adrian amended with a smile. He had to continually assure himself it wasn't all an elaborate dream, walking around in a perpetual state of giddiness as he reminded himself over and over, Ladybug has feelings for you. Ladybug is your girlfriend and you are Ladybug's boyfriend. It was like he was an amnesiac, repeating the facts as if they could slip away at any given point. Ladybug likes you. Ladybug wants to kiss you. Maybe Ladybug more than likes you, maybe Ladybug want to do more than kiss you, and that's where things got dicey. Because for someone who made everything feel so miraculous, Ladybug was also solely responsible for making Adrian's life incredibly tougher. Actually, scratch that. She made his life incredibly harder. In the most literal, vulgar sense of the word. Adrian felt like he was 14 again. Like he was some untested preteen who had just discovered porn for the first time. Except now everything was much more tangible. And now that he didn't have to guess what Ladybug's lips felt like, didn't have to imagine how she'd feel pressed against his chest or sighing against his collarbone, Adrian's subconscious had no problem supplying him with new and now much more plausible fantasies involving his polka-dotted kryptonite. Nearly every morning Adrian woke up shuddering, underwear plastered uncomfortably between his thighs and in need of a good shower. Perhaps a Bible as well. Plus it only got worse when he was around Ladybug, Adrian's body overreacting to even the simplest of movement on her part. It was a more than a little pathetic actually, how much he wanted her. A friendly arm wrapped around his shoulder as they posed for pictures. Boner, a chaste kiss on the lips. Boner. Her greedily devouring the chocolate he had begun bringing her regardless of what time of the month it was. Oh forget it, he was a goner. In fact, he'd once gotten aroused by watching her roundhouse kick an akumatized construction worker, a worrying reaction he decided to re-evaluate at a later date. Needless to say, he was at his wit's end. If he were smarter, Adrian would have known better than to bring up such personal afflictions to his best friend, especially after their infamous period talk, but he was at his limit, and had reached the point that any embarrassment on his part was worth it if there was a chance he could gain a little insight into controlling his own behavior. So here he stood. What kind of advice we talking here? Nino said, standing up from the bench outside the school entrance and flashing his friend an easy smile. Grades, looks, or girls? Adrian gave a deep breath. The last one, I guess, bad idea. His friend's face immediately lit up in the worst possible way and Adrian felt his eye twitch, already feeling that first hint of regret but too far in to back out without arousing suspicion. Holy fuck, it's happening. Nino said wondrously, head swiveling to scan the courtyard around them. Where in the world is your mother? Beats me. Adrian deadpanned, allowing himself to be dragged further towards the school. Aaliyah, Nino bellowed, pulling his sighing friend alongside him as he searched for his partner. In mischief. Aaliyah, it's happening. What few students who had stuck around for lunch hour watched the commotion with idle fascination, returning to their previous activities when they realized it was just Nino being Nino. Bad idea. Adrian thought miserably, almost as bad as Googling for answers. Aaliyah. They found the girl resting under a stairwell, phone held out before her as she video chatted amicably with whoever was on the other side of the screen. She jerked up at the sound of Nino's yells, eyes narrowing at the two boys standing over her before she returned to her call with a sigh. Give me a second, Mari, I have a feeling something mad dumb is about to happen. It's happening. Nino all but hissed, shoving an already blushing Adrian forward. What are you? Our son is finally ready to learn about the birds and the bees. Aaliyah's eyes lit up with interest, spelling trouble for the blonde boy before her. She scrambled off the ground, bringing her phone up once more to address Marinette gleefully. Sorry girl, I'll have to call you back. Gotta go give Adrian the sex talk real quick. Bye. From the other end of the call came a sort of sputtering squeak, cut off abruptly as the girl pressed end. That is not what I asked for. Adrian rushed to say, giving Nino a hostile look as Aaliyah descended on him. He didn't like the malicious glint in her eye as she steered him under the stairwell. Bad idea. Tell me what's on your mind. I said I needed girl advice and this jackass don't talk about your father like that. Aaliyah faux lectured, twining her arm with an equally smirking Nino as the two regarded him like doting parents. And you should know there's no shame in wanting to learn more about sex. It's natural for a boy your age to start feeling urges. Adrian clapped his hands over his ears, giving a violent shake of his head as he made a show of not listening. His friends just dissolved into laughter. Oh, aren't you guys are just hilarious. You know, if you won't listen to my questions I'll find someone who will. He watched them slowly collect themselves, allowing his hand to drop back to his sides as Aaliyah stepped forward. All right, she began, softening her expression as she laid a steadying hand on his shoulder. You just tell us what you want to know, son, and we'll do our best to enlighten you. Adrian shot Nino a desperate glance, deflating as his friend just gave a shrug. This wasn't exactly something he wanted to discuss around Aaliyah. You got yourself into this mess, aggressed. Might as well just get on with it. Adrian stepped back, leaning against the stairwell in a cross-armed pout as he muttered into his collarbone. I didn't quite catch that, bro. You wanna maybe speak up there? Nino said, planting himself beside Aaliyah as the two leaned in curiously. I said, Adrian ground out with a wince, body tensing in preparation for the inevitable roast he was about to receive from his so-called parents. How do you hide an erection when you're making out with a girl? Surprisingly, they didn't laugh. There was pause as both of his friends tilted their heads in consideration. Aaliyah's eyes narrowed, turning towards Nino as they engaged in a silent deliberation. After just enough time had passed for Adrian to work up one hell of blush, they both spoke out in unison, the words plain and simple. You don't. Adrian repeated, brow furrowing confusion. Yeah, I mean it's kinda just there. I guess you could try to think about wrinkly old people or covalent bonds, but more often than not you've got to roll with it, bro. Nino said with a shrug, turning to his partner for confirmation. Aaliyah gave a nod. It's a pretty natural response, especially if the girl is good, she trailed off, flashing Adrian a smug look, which I'm guessing she was if you felt the need to ask us this question. He gulped. Good is a bit of an understatement here. Hey, yeah. Nino said, gears turning behind his skull. Have you been holding out on me, dude? Because you can totally tell me if you've started seeing someone, I'm not. Adrian said, perhaps a bit too quickly if their identically quirked eyebrows were any indicator. He tried to seem aloof, continuing on in a casual tone. Let's just say this is all a hypothetical at this point. Two gazes narrowed. I'm serious. Ignoring their skeptical gaze, Adrian soldiered on, still a bit confused. So, are you sure there's nothing to stop it? I mean, he had the decency to look embarrassed as he gestured vaguely below his waist. What am I supposed to do with it? You're asking us what to do, with a boner. Aaliyah asked incredulously, you sure you're not here for the sex talk? No. Adrian huffed exasperatedly, grinding his hands into his eye sockets at the sheer mortification of his position. I just want to know what I'm supposed to do if I get a hard-on while making out. Another short pause. Well, that's when you push it into her hips. Wait, what now? Adrian removed his hands from his face slowly, gaze bearing down on a shrugging Nino. Aaliyah seemed to be a bit stunned as well, eyes widening a fraction as she gave him a measured glance. I mean, obviously make sure she's into it first and pull back if she seems uncomfortable. The boy rushed to amend, raising his hands in placating gesture. But yeah, that seems to be the usual course of action. Adrian wasn't quite sure how to respond to that. Luckily for him, Aaliyah seemed like she did. He's right actually, she said, crossing her arms as the boys turned to stare. Adrian wasn't sure what was more surprising. Her genuine praise, or the considerate way she regarded Nino before continuing on in a conversational tone. It's the truth. Boners are what lets us ladies know we're doing a good job, and who doesn't like to get rewarded for their efforts? Aaliyah said, lips curling slightly. So yeah, grind that shit out as long as you're both on board. Kinky and consensual is the way to go. Nino, for his part, did a good job of not buckling under her heated gaze, even managing to keep his voice steady as he responded with a smirk of his own. You got that right, sister. Ahem. Adrian cleared his throat loudly, pressing his lips together as he shot them a quick wave. The two stepped apart tentatively as their friend just rolled his eyes. Down, kids. So, Nino began, forcing his attention back to the blonde teen before him. You have any more questions there, sport? No, Adrian said, tossing their words around his head in consideration. Is it really that simple? Would Ladybug even go for it? Recollecting the way she had nearly mounted him each time they'd seen each other in the 2 weeks since becoming a couple, he couldn't help but hope. A slew of filthy possibilities began dancing through his thoughts, each insinuation bolder than the last as Adrian repressed a shudder. Those long legs wrapped around his waist, thighs squeezing his sides as their hips rolled into each other. Her nails dragging across his shoulders, whimpers working their way between her parted lips as he drove her upward with an aching thrust. The wicked smile she would give him as she flipped them over, moving to straddle, bad. No. Public. Stop. With a rush of blood downward came the swift reminder to cool his ardor before this conversation got impossibly more awkward. Maybe the next question he should ask is how to hide a boner in front of his friends. Adrian brought his fantasies to a screeching halt. Desperately willing the mental picture of his girlfriend grinding her hips down on his hard-on away, he tried to arrange his face into a semblance of casualty. No more questions, but thanks. He forced out, conjuring a pleasant smile. While his body screamed at him to find privacy, and fast. Self-control, Adrian. You have it, now use it. If they noticed something off, they had the decency not to mention it. Well, alright, Aaliyah said, tucking her laptop under one arm as she prepared to go. Use your newfound power wisely and let me know if there's anything else you need advice about. She gave him a knowing smile and a loving punch to the shoulder before heading into the courtyard, turning at the last second to give his best friend an over-the-shoulder glance. Oh, and Nino. Yeah. Text me sometime. Chapter end notes. Shakes my fist in the air. How in the world did this Wi-Fi work its way in here? AAYYYYY we have art http://bullysquadess.tumblr.com/post/137569589789737/another demon exorcist the parents and the son.